Hansi. Hello, this is Cathy Richardson, and this is an interview with Professor Nicolas Renaud. So, Tansi Nito Temtek. Hello, everybody. My name is Cathy Richardson, Kinu Isqueyu. And today, for this little podcast, I'm doing an interview with Nicolas Renaud. He's a professor in First People Studies at Concordia University and also quite a renowned Wendat Quebecois filmmaker. So I'll let Nicolas introduce himself to you and then we'll explore a topic together. And I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional lands of the Ganiyang Gahaga here in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. So hi, Nicolas.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for the nice intro. Yes, my name is Nicolas Renaud. I'm of mixed Quebecois and Wendat heritage. I'm a member of the Huron-Wendat First Nation of Wendake near Quebec City. Yes, I'm a prof in First People Studies at Concordia University. Filmmaker, mostly documentary filmmaking, and visual artist doing installation work, video installation, and wampum belt.
Yeah, well, I hope we can hear more about the Wampum Belt project. That's really, it's really exciting. And I think you have a number of interests, including environmental integrity and preservation and cultural practices. So do you want to just explain a little bit about what you're going to talk about in this podcast?
Yes, I'd like to talk mostly about environmental issues and how we can try to connect the teachings of traditional indigenous cultures, how relevant it is for the global environmental crisis we're all facing in our days. Some of the challenges too of articulating that politically, concretely, in some situations right now. So I want to talk more specifically about the forest, a little more, and issues of logging and clear cutting in Quebec, and protection of the caribou, which is on the news every second day for the last year. So I've always been interested in environmental issues, in our various connections to nature, culturally, biologically. It's part of most of the film and artwork I've done as well, and part of my teaching also. And I keep learning all the time, as far as if we're talking about traditional teachings and cultural principles of balanced reciprocal relationship with the land. Sometimes, a certain teaching or principle is like reciprocity. It's spoken like that. We hear it. It becomes part of our language. It becomes part of what we say, of what we read. And then I realized that we never stop learning about what that means, because we don't fully live like the people before, who thought about those things, who define cultures around those principles, who were immersed in that relationship all the time. We don't live like them anymore. So just a word like that takes time before it delivers to us everything it contains. So I find that fascinating, and how could I say, it's a motivation. There's like, not hope, because I have no hope for the fate of the land and what's going on, but some kind of faith that there are things there that our ancestors have planted in our mind and in our hearts, that will help us thinking and face challenges.
Yeah, I was thinking that we have a DNA-based proclivity towards it, because you and I are both here sitting in an office, but we're sitting in a beautiful forest, and I'm by the Cowichan River, and you're in a traditional Wendat forest there. So one of the things, one of the questions that comes up for me now and at different points in my work is that some folks, some Indigenous people say, our knowledge could be really helpful right now on this planet, and it could have been a long time ago too, if we had followed these principles of respect, reciprocity, giving back to the land, not just taking. And then sometimes other people say, it's not Indigenous people's job just to give our knowledge to everybody and solve all the problems for the white settler society. And so there's that tension, like, we need to do more, more of the heavy load around these issues we face. So how do you handle that question, or the tension that comes up, like whose job it is, and how should our knowledges be available for everyone?
Yes, it's a tricky question, but I believe that in terms of our relationship with the earth, the knowledge should be exposed and pushed and validated, and because that in itself is a challenge, because it has to be done in a way that keep reaffirming how there is something deep in there, and there's truth in there, because it's so easy to dismiss the cliche of Indigenous people in harmony with nature, that then it doesn't land anywhere. You say, oh, Indigenous people, First Nations, stewards of the land, and then okay, these becomes ready-made things that, and people can easily dismiss it, or they'll have the classical Western view of like, oh yeah, it was easy when population were smaller, or it was this, like they don't fully understand that they are deeply different real principles that were taught through, that were enacted in practices, that were spoken in ceremonies, that like there's a contract with the land that was reenacted all the time. So these things are concrete, they're complex, they're a mix of moral and spirituality and politics and science and all of that. So yes, because colonialism and its hand in hand advancement with capitalism destroys everything for everyone. It's not just like, how could I say, there's other forms of power, other shades of power that can indefinitely benefit the people in power, with until it's destroyed or reversed, and then they'll feel something. They'll feel some consequence, like racism. So the group that puts itself at the top and oppresses others may be comfortable there as long as this is not dismantled. But colonialism and capitalism, and what it does to the land and what it does to people's relationship with the land, everyone will pay for it.
Yeah.
Colonialism destroys everything and the horizon of everyone's future, including those who are benefiting from colonialism.
Right.
So that's why I think that there's something a bit more particular there, where Indigenous voices can matter. It is a bit different than not sharing sacred ceremony or language or things like that. Doesn't mean that everything has to be shared, but there has to be one part of that thinking that is offered to the world. I mean, the world's not really listening anyway, so but we can speak.
Yeah. So when you're out of the city, maybe back near your territory, and you get up in the morning and you go outside, and it's more of a a natural or rural environment, what kind of things do you notice and what kind of things do you pay attention to because of who you are and the Wendat principles that you've taken in over the years?
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you said before, I don't know if I've said it before, but you said when that territory forest behind me, and it is. It could have been anywhere, and any good stock picture from the web, but it is. That's right across from my dad's hunting camp. So it's all big spruce and moss and horsehair lichen on the branches. It's that kind of environment that I really like. Those kind of coniferous forests are uh, fast disappearing in the last few decades. It's clear cut everywhere, and it's small bushes of leaf. How do we say in English? Deciduous, deciduous. Anyway, not coniferous. The other trees,
Yeah.
small. So it changes the environment a lot. What I've noticed, I mean, I try to think of the relationship of everything with everything. Um, I, I could try to say two things about that to me matter. So it's about a detail, a little cultural detail, which is the tobacco offering, Thanksgiving. So I didn't learn that from my family. We didn't do that. Thanks. Nice. Yeah, and I'm growing some now in my office and at home. Um, we didn't do that. I was taught about respectful relationship with the land, and when we hunted and fished and picked things, to be respectful and thankful for everything. But we didn't do the tobacco, and the tobacco is something that was in Wendat culture, like other Great Lakes, St. Lawrence Valley culture, and probably many other cultures across the continent. I just don't know, but it became a widespread practice. So there's a few things I find interesting about that. When first of all, the first time I did it in presence of my dad, because we shot a grouse, he cracked a few jokes. What are you doing? What's that? Like there was some kind of hippie thing or whatever. And I think there was a bit of embarrassment too that he didn't teach me that. I learned that by hanging out with other natives, and then later I found out that some of my cousins in Wendake have for years have started doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are two things that I didn't fully understand at first. I would do it to strictly to give thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So to say thank you to something that offered itself, you know. And then I learned from someone who's Mi'kmaq, I think, going fishing, that when you arrive, also you do the offering. It's not just thanking after you got something, after the land's given you something. You start the relationship by acknowledging when you arrive, telling the land and the water who you are, that you come with a good heart, that you don't intend to take more than it can give, that you acknowledge all the relationships that exist and that you're part of it, and that you want to protect that network of relationships. So you arrive in the forest, you arrive to the water, you're going to pick something, you're going to fish, you're going to hunt. There is a first offering to start the relationship. So to me, that was important to understand that. And when I asked someone at the Longhouse in Wendake, if you say something particular or whatever, said, well, say your plan and say a few words in Wendat. And I said, well, that sounds fake because I don't have a clan, that's kind of been lost. And yeah, people now say, well, I was from that clan or my grandmother was from that clan, but officially I'm not in one, and most people in Wendake are not. And I only speak the words that I've learned. So all of that sounded like playing Indian. And I say, how can I? But he said, it doesn't matter. First of all, get rid of that self-consciousness. Just say the words so the land knows. And that to me was so transformative. So the land knows. Later, I kept thinking about that, and I thought, I completed a sentence. I done in my head. So the land remembers a relationship with your ancestors. You know, you there's already something that exists, and you come to renew it, to reactivate it. The other thing was that if we thank, because we think we can talk with the land, and we can see the relationships and everything, the land talks to us too. So if we say the word reciprocity, uh, it has to mean something. It has to mean both ways, right? So that's why when I gave a talk about Wendat spiritual practices of fishing around Georgian Bay last year, I called it, "Does the fish respect you?"
Mm.
Because we keep saying, "Do you respect the land? Do you respect the fish?" And I think it's important to complete the question and say, "Does the land respect you? Does the fish respect you?" Because uh, I think that the way the ancestors thought is that the land, the animals, the fish, they see in us too.
Mm.
And it's about trying to be a good human in general. It's not just to say, "Hey, I respect you, the moose or the grouse or the trout." You know, it's, yeah, but you're a jerk with everyone else, and you don't live a balanced life in a you don't have a balanced mind and a balanced heart. So I think there was the belief that um yeah, other living beings, they see in us, and to accept to give themselves, it's not just about acknowledging them and thanking them. It's kind of our moral check. They they look at who we are. So that's, I saw that through some missionary writings about the Wendat, when they say, "Oh, someone's a very good fisherman," or "Someone's a very good hunter." And when you understand what the community meant by that, it was not that they were the most skilled.
Mm.
It's more that the spirits of the animals and the fish had confirmed that that was a person worthy of giving themselves to them. You
Mm.
know, it's a more, it's a old thing. Your social being, your personal being. So that's a much deeper relationship. You know, it's like we have to be good examples of how we live in harmony with everything, with others, and with the earth, and animals see that. So that's one thing to acknowledge um, when you give thanks, or when you announce yourself with the tobacco. You know, if you've lied, you feel guilty about something, you've wronged someone, and it haunts you a little, you know, you have to say, I'm not the most balanced right now. You know, and I hope I can work through that. You have to believe that the land sees you.
Mhm.
That can sound esoteric, but I'm sure you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It's if we really think reciprocity, that it's always going both ways.
Mhm. Well, some academic scientists might think it's esoteric, but a lot of people just understand it as their culture. I received a similar teaching around the work I was doing to support children who were in state care. They've been removed from their families, and the elder said, you have to take the children back to the land so the land can feel the children's footprints and the children playing on the land, because you don't want the land to forget the children. And it's just such a simple teaching, and yet it's so hard to get like mainstream social work practice to understand that that's important. So now
Totally.
they're evolving, and there's more like nature-based social work, but it's not the same thing. There are so many aspects and different kinds of life forces in the land that do see us,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I saw
stay connected. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I saw similar things as you say, being spoken in the walking out ceremony in Cree culture, at least around James Bay, when a young infant, when they are starting to walk and stand on their legs, for those who still live by traditional culture, and they do the walking out ceremony, the the guy, the knowledge keeper who does the ceremony will talk to the forest and to the animals and say, you know, this young person is now will now their feet will now touch the land, you know, meet them, know them, so later for the rest of their life they're not a stranger. You will know them when they come to you again. It's for, yeah, it's for that person to be known by the animals.
Yeah, when I worked at Métis Community Services, when we had a ceremony for the new ones, the new arrivals, we would take the soil, the earth from Batoche, where the Métis, fought their battle against the Canadian government, and we'll put the soil on their feet. So
Mm.
just though they have a touch of the homeland, even though we weren't in that particular Métis spot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so in terms of and then those cultural practices, this cultural frame of relating to the land, I think was very concretely channeled through real sustainable practices. And
Mhm.
we could give examples about almost every resource that each nation used on their land. I'm not aware of very much natural resources that were depleted by an indigenous nation on their land. It might have happened at some point, but I'm not aware of it. That there's a particular site I find very interesting. It's a fishing weir in Ontario between Lake Simcoe and Lake Couchiching. It's a small channel of water that connects the two lakes, and it used to be a spawning ground for many fish of Big Lake Simcoe. And one of the oldest human structure on the continent is in Canada, not on the continent. One of the oldest human structure in Canada is there. It's a historical site now. It's a fishing weir. There's just the poles that are underwater that have stayed there, and they've been dated about 5,000 years. And so many different cultures, the nations have used it. And I've gone. It was Wendat territory for a long time near Georgian Bay and Lake Simcoe, and there are stories of the Anishinaabe, who are now the main nations of that region, since the Wendat left, had to leave the area in the mid 1600. But I came across stories of the Anishinaabe that they still remember up to the 19th century, how they have met the Wendat, and they would discuss how to use the weir. So it was a international meeting place. They were not fighting each other for it. They were teaching each other how to use it. What I find fascinating is that it was operated for about 5,000 years, and it's a very, I mean, you cannot have a more ecologically critical and fragile thing than a narrow channel of water where fish go through to spawn. You could destroy all fish population if you're not careful. Yeah. By harvesting fish there. And while the Great Lakes, like Lake Ontario, were depleted in like 100 or 150 years of commercial fishing, lake trout, landlocked salmon, all of that was depleted. People who fish now in the Great Lakes are fishing farm fish that were stocked because it was all depleted. So while colonial exploitation of the water would destroy huge lakes in very short time, for 5,000 years, people could maintain in a sustainable way a very efficient and very rich small fishing site where fish spawn. So I'm not sure what were the concrete practices. Was it to put the big fish, the good spawners back? Was it to limit yourself at a certain quantity quota? But obviously, and all kinds of spiritual practices were going around that site. But obviously, there was something that was done to maintain it and be able to go back there every year for so long. So to me, that's a fascinating example. That's a historical one, but there are tons of still current example.
Mm. Yeah, what do you think of this? So in my work with the Casca people in the Yukon, they think it's crazy to do catch and release because they say, okay, so you're getting a fish and you're not eating it. You're gonna throw it back, but it's wounded, and so it's weak and vulnerable, so the other fish can attack and kill it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in a perspective of eating the resources of the land and feeding yourself, catch and release, it has that kind of connotation of non-indigenous sports fishing, as if it's more, as if it was more noble or ecological to release because you don't kill the fish. A lot of the fish hooked and released die,
Yeah.
or don't do well. But I think there's something good, and that's been part of some provincial new regulations around fishing through Canada for a few decades now, to release the big ones, to release the spawners. Like walleye was getting decimated all over Quebec and many other provinces, and the I know that for non-indigenous fishermen, the government has put in those regulations where over a certain size you cannot keep them, you cannot kill them, and it really helped the population because these are the breeders, the spawners. So that there is something valuable in that, but I think that depends on the context. That has to do with how big is the pressure on the on the population of fish. You know, if it's a small community with their known location that supplies what they need, it's one thing. But when we're dealing with waters where there's many users and there's pressure on the resource,
Mm-hmm.
it's different.
Yeah, yeah. So the people that are listening may be interested in connecting with you more in terms of watching some of your films or seeing some of your lectures. Uh, what kinds of things are you doing to share your knowledges, and how can people connect with that?
I should do more. I should have a website or something. But some links pretty much lead to most things available publicly for now. If we go on the faculty profile page, the
Mhm.
Concordia University website, I
Okay.
inserted some links there. So, like my short film about the caribou and Innu singer-songwriter Florent Volant, produced by the NFB. The link is there, and links to a few other things. So people could find it there.
Mhm. And when we hear people talking about the Haudenosaunee, we often hear about the three sisters, the corn, beans, and squash. In your community, what kinds of things are typical harvest uh, food that you've enjoyed or your family's enjoyed over decades?
Yeah, well, originally, traditionally, it's the same culture. You know, all the Longhouse people, the Wendat are part of it. The language is close. The culture is the language is related. The culture is very close. So the three sisters are at the root of it too. Um, so we do the corn soup or the three sisters soup. But it's usually more corn soup because I find that squash makes soup heavy. So it's usually more corn and bean. I really do the Three Sisters as soup. And it will be moose meat usually when possible in it. I don't hunt moose. My dad used to. He's got a bit too old now to do it on his own. So often it's grouse that I add in. Moose has been for Wendake. Moose has been the big thing because that's a way to be in the forest for a while. There's a good population north of Quebec City. In the 1990s, the Supreme Court of Canada finally recognized the traditional rights of the Wendat to be unimpeded in going to on the territory, because when they created a provincial park early 20th century, they sent the provincial police to arrest anyone that would still go hunting, fishing, trapping there. So it took about 100 years to get the rights back. So it's a way for people to go in family and groups, go back on the land in the bush, to have good organic meat for a year. I mean, a moose, like for us, a family of four. I mean, a moose would pretty much feed two families when my dad went with his cousins for the year. You know, unless you eat it every day, you have meat for until the next hunt for a year. So it's been that brook trout is all over that territory. That's part of the food that connects us to the land. So these are three things though that I could say are related to the logging issues and the effects we see. Like I love spruce grouse especially, because that's mostly what I would find when I go walk and I hunt grouse. And see, there's no rational reason for me to not hunt moose, but hunt. You know, it's a total prejudice of the animal being smaller, and I mind less shooting than a big one. I I I I I, I don't want to shoot a moose. It's I'm oversensitive. There's no rational reason to say, well, how can you kill a bird? I'm making a hierarchy, and I feel stupid for it, but that's how it is.
Maybe
So
you have a different relationship with them.
yeah. So spruce grouse, they're amazing birds compared to rough grouse, because they need the coniferous, but also they're one of the only bird that can make it through the winter only on spruce and fir needles. There's almost no nutrient in that. Their system is made to live off that, and the female defines a territory of about 1 square kilometer, and they divide the territory like that. They're loners, and then the male in mating time has to find a female on her territory. So since the logging industry is taking all mature coniferous forest, it becomes very difficult because they leave just little patches where it's not enough for a population of spruce grouse to survive there. And no one talks about spruce grouse. No one cares. You know, it's not an emblematic thing. But I can say throughout my lifetime that places where I could see 10 a day by walking in the trails, I see none now, or one, because it's clear cut. It's a desert. There's a line of tree along the lakes and along the roads, and you look behind and it's all flat. So rough grouse will come back when new bushes grow, but not spruce grouse. They're gone for it. They like moss, rocks, and spruce. And that's what the logging industry destroys. Moose, everyone thought for a while, oh, if we have a good check on our hunting practices, it's good, and they do okay with logging because they like to go eat the new growth, you know, the small bushes and everything. So it's not too bad for. Now moose is the population's going down on Wendat territory. It's going down in Abitibi on Algonquin territory, and it's connected to logging. And the people, like for the Algonquin Nation in Abitibi, who didn't agree with the government's plan to study, because, you know, they block the roads to say we don't want hunting, we don't want sport hunting, non-Indigenous hunters, we need a moratorium or something. What I had read in the news, that the people who the government said, okay, we'll study the thing, we'll do that together in partnership, they refuse to factor in logging.
Yeah.
You know, that's the most. So that's why then there was a divide. Some of the land defenders say, no, we're not part. of that deal because the government refuses to do that. The same thing is happening on Wendat territory. It's complicated because sometimes First Nations, like there's deals between the industry and band councils, so there's some income that comes from the logging. And I know I've tried once at a meeting to say something in Wendake, and it was kind of deflected. And I know there's something blurry there about what's the stance with the logging industry. And brook trout, I was saying spruce grouse, moose, brook trout, as far as when that territory north of Quebec City is concerned. Well, when there's so much logging, you see it very quickly in a few years in lakes, how the trout is more rare and smaller because the rainwater just brings sediments and mud into the shores of the lake and the creeks, and trout needs fine gravel to spawn. So when there's no more filtering of the water through a thick forest around lakes, it's not a good environment for brook trout. And many people will say that anyone who goes fishing in the north and have seen the land changing, not just Indigenous people will say it, where there's a lot of logging and clear cutting. Yeah. Even though no one's touching the lake, you see the brook trout population go down right away. So these are direct and dramatic effect of uncontrolled logging on the land.
Yeah. Well, we always get, listeners that say, oh, what can I do to help? How can I help Indigenous people or be an ally? So at this point, I'll just say, talk to the local Indigenous folks, especially land defenders, and see how you can support them. Because it sounds like we're on our last legs.
Yeah, I mean, I've like for a talk recently, there was a fee that I received. I said, well, send it to the Atikamekw Land Defender because they have a GoFundMe page for supplying their food and fuel as they camp by the road, and their territory and is completely damaged as well. Yeah, it is. I mean, ask your political representative that they stop being arrogant and dismissive of Indigenous voices. The Quebec government is doing everything to please the logging lobby when the woodland and mountain caribou is going extinct. I just read again on the news last week that there was a leak of the plan they've been supposed to publish for a few years now. And the only thing that can save the caribou is a protected area because they're very sensitive and fragile. You cannot keep making new roads for logging and cutting all the trees, and they don't make it. They need protected areas. And the leak of the maps made the Innu of Pessamit and Mastoyat realize that a large part of what the government of Quebec plans to define as protected area are large areas of forest that were burnt by forest fires in the last few years. So they're worth nothing for the logging industry. So like, we'll define that as protected area, but by the time it grows back, the caribou will die because the rest of their habitat is being cut. They're even making it, they're weaponizing like a nationalist agenda in that, because the federal government has responsibility for threatened species, and they say, oh, it's the economy and the land of Quebec. We won't let the federal interfere. They're constantly dismissing Indigenous concerns, and so it sounds hopeless. I wish everyone would revolt against that. I mean, the Innu of Pessamit have stopped by their own will to hunt caribou for 15 years because they've seen it vanish. And they've been all that time pleading for protecting some of the areas where there's a few caribou left, and the government just keeps going in circle, not answering, saying there'll be consultation, there'll be plan, and in the meanwhile, they let the logging industry cut everything. Then I have an issue also with, not I have an issue, I mean, I hope I would understand better, and I think there's something problematic there, that the current model of negotiation and consultation doesn't work, obviously, because everything keeps being destroyed and damaged. And people want to block roads, want to do something to say enough, we got to do something. Then it become targeted sometimes by the official representatives as not representing the nation, or interfering with the good course of negotiations. We just heard that again last week about a group of Innu and Atikamekw near Lac Saint-Jean, who said, okay, enough with the clear cutting there. They're blocking a road still. And right away, the band councils come out and say, they don't represent us. We have a negotiation process going. I mean, they've been negotiating for 50 years about like trying to assert their rights on those forests, and it's not going anywhere. So that's just a big question, you know what I mean? I don't know what I'm not advocating, say, block every road, blow up logging machinery. We got to respect the work that some people in band councils are doing. At the same time, I have little faith in it, so I'm not sure how to approach these issues anymore. Like politically, it's like reconciliation, you know. So the buzzwords of consultation have not gone very far to change anything.
No. Yeah, we just need to reconcile that without this beautiful planet, we won't be having anywhere to live. So, yeah. I want to thank you so much, and let's get this GoFundMe site, and I'll put it up here. So we'll send this around, and hopefully some people will support that project. And all these concerns that you're bringing up, it's really startling, actually, and people need to know about it, especially here in Quebec. So anyway, thank you so much for talking about this. And any last words that you want to share?
You're welcome. Well, I'd like to sound a bit more urgent and dramatic. Things are very bad. All the all the signals are red.
Yeah.
Nothing is going well. And we need the forest against climate change. The caribou is disappearing. Moose population is going down. Bird population are going down. Fish is disappearing. Everything is sick. The land is struggling, and there are teachings in indigenous cultures that tell us to consider how everything is related. You know, what's the forest doing for us? What's the forest doing for the animals, for the fish, for the water? We have to try to think that way, because nothing is going in the right direction right now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nicolas. I think this has been a really important conversation.
Oh, thanks to you. Thanks a lot.